something that I find striking about it is the New York Times, CNN, these media institutions, they thrive on views. They want people to watch them and to read them. You and Richard are among the most visible and enjoyed economists that there are on YouTube. I mean, I know this. This is part of my job. So why do you think it is that these institutions aren't
Because
interested
we're
in speaking
outside
to
the tunnel vision that they have. Yeah, we want to people to argue about things that don't matter. You want to argue about abortion rights and women, have plenty of that. They can talk about that. You want to talk about pollution and the environmental problem. You can talk about that. Do you want to talk about, what do you think of modern art? Is modern non-objective art good or bad? You can't talk about economics. Now, it's true, the Washington Post actually asked me to write an op-ed for them on the need for debt cancellation. And they did put it on their site. They didn't put it in a printed edition. Somebody overruled it. When I was writing my book on the origins of enterprise and debt in Mesopotamia, Yale University Press said, this is wonderful. We want you, let's send it out to reviewers. The reviewers all said, yeah, this is great. He has to update the bibliography. He has to use the more recent translations of Hammurabi's Law. And they were all set to do and forgiven their debts. But then the overall board said, no, we can't do that. This is beyond the scope of what we're doing. And I think that's the answer. Same thing at Chicago. The head of Pantheon was going to publish essentially the book that became my Killing the Host. And he went to head the University of Chicago Press. Said, look, I had a great writer who's worked with the chairman of the board of Pantheon for many years. Let's do it. So he submitted the book. The entire board threatened to resign if they published my book. That's not the kind of discussion they wanted. The discussion they want is you don't discuss or debate something that is unchallengeable, something that is unspeakable. So we're speaking about the unspeakable, you should say. What we're doing here is what is not going to be found in the general discussions, even though your shows and shows that are other people that are talking to Richard and me are very popular. There have not been any of the scouts, literary scouts from publishing companies or newspapers or magazines or other media that have any interest at all in discussing it. We're beyond the pale. I guess there must be other phrases for that, but you're not allowed to challenge the vested interests. And they're willing to talk about, you can disagree about things that don't pose any challenge to the vested interests, Veblen's phrase, but take them for granted. And you can talk about abortion rights, but you take for granted the whole financial and economic system. When we talk about not taking for granted by the economic system, but saying this system is not working well. It's turned into a bad, destructive, deindustrializing system, and the debts can't be paid, then all of a sudden you've made yourself not welcome at the party. So that you'll have things like George Soros's group, INET, Institute for New Economic Thinking. It can't be that new. It can be new in the sense of we're going to exclude everything in the past. We're not going to talk about classical economics. We're not going to talk about Marxism. That's the past. We're going to talk about how financial fund managers can help make a better, more profitable economy and make you wealthier by making capital gains to increase your wealth and let the pension funds make enough money to pay you while you work within the existing system. What Richard and I are saying isn't really new. we're saying we're not trying to reinvent the wheel. We're saying, look, the wheel's already there.
Yeah.
It's been invented. If you have the background, and it does take a little time to work into this background, but you have to realize that the vocabulary of classical economics and Marxism have been hijacked. As I said, for Adam Smith and the classical economists, a free market was free from economic rent and all these rentier charges. To today's economy, a free market is free from government taxation of economic rent, from the government doing anything to restrict usury, to restrict what the financial sector can do, to restrict exploitation, and to acknowledge that really the most profitable section of every economy today is crime. Drug dealing, crime, and breaking the law consistently by financial corporations, by monopolists, by the bankers, by the credit card companies, by breaking the usury, what used to be usury laws, by being a libertarian and liberty for the 1% to do whatever they want to the 99%. So you almost have to think of how to analyze vocabulary, and hardly by surprise, a lot of this analysis, literary analysis of vocabulary, was done by Marxists. And even in the case of a monetary theory, the modern monetary theory developed out of Marxism. Hyman Minsky was a Marxist, and he told me that when he went to the University of Chicago in the 1930s, Maynard Krieger helped teach him about Marxism. Maynard had run for vice president with Norman Thomas on the Socialist Party ticket in 1940, and still going strong in the 1950s when I knew him. But Minsky didn't talk about Marxism, but his children told me that they were all brought up to, he urged them to read Kapital, to read Marx, and his widow told me that she thought that I was carrying through his spirit, and she acknowledged that, well, he wasn't allowed to teach at the new school because one of the professors, Minsky was the babysitter of him and had changed his diapers when he was young, and the professor said, I can't have another professor here who changed my diapers as a child. I'm always blocking out the name of that person. Any rate, he was at Bard College, which is not exactly at the Levy Institute, which is very progressive in many ways, but certainly not Marxist. And none of the modern monetary theorists, Randy Ray, all of us have a background in Marxism, but we don't describe it as Marxism as such. And Stephanie Kelton became the advisor to Bernie Sanders and part of the Democratic Finance Committee. She's kept Marxism quiet. And as it is, there's such a fight against modern monetary theory that says that the government doesn't have to borrow from bondholders. It can create their own money. The effect on inflation is identical. Whether you borrow from somebody's fortune and spend it into the economy, or whether you print it, it's all the same effect. That's basically what modern monetary theory says. It's still, we're isolated. The students that we had at the University of Missouri at Kansas City do not get the prestigious positions because the prestigious economic journals won't publish any of their ideas because, again, it's beyond the pale. The economic journals will not publish any article that suggests that money should be viewed as a public utility, or that discusses the phenomenon of economic rent, or discusses the fact that things could be different. In order to be a respected economist, you have to start off with what the British, there is no alternative, TINA. That's their motto, Margaret Thatcher. Margaret Thatcher's spirit is that's sort of the precondition, the entry price that you have to pay is to go along with the vocabulary of we're for democracy, even though democracy turns out to be oligarchy. again, we're dealing with all of this. So I've had to basically self-publish all of my books through the institute that I'm associated with. Harvard published a few of the early volumes of our studies, our Assyriological and archaeological studies, a couple of volumes, but they weren't widely picked up by the rest of the profession because, again, if you talk about how for 2,000 years, the Sumerians, Babylonians, early Judaism canceled the debts more or less regularly with new rulers. The very thought that debts can be canceled is anathema. We're talking about things that can't be taught. There's a tunnel vision, and that tunnel vision is spread to the people who've been promoted within the BRICS countries to try to say, how are we going to restructure the society? Because many of them have been promoted by this, the National Endowment for Democracy has all of these non-government organizations that have been promoting individuals who they see when they go through the universities or in practice that sort of are willing to follow the U.S. neoliberal line, and they're promoted, and that's why the country of Georgia recently has banned asserted the ability to close down non-government organizations that are really trying for a regime change, to get rid of any regime politicians, members, or influential people who speak about the unspeakable. Well, Herman Kahn wrote a book thinking about the unthinkable, about the atom bomb. Well, we're not only thinking about the unthinkable, but we're saying there's 100 years of people who've talked about the unthinkable. Wouldn't you want to hear how Western civilization has been developing since 1800 or the American Revolution or 1776 with the Adam Smith's Wealth of Nations? It's a kind of passive censorship that's been nurtured by, I think, ever since World War II, the attempt by the United States to prevent any discussion of an alternative.